Hey, Erica, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. So I was just saying to Erica that I spent some time this morning on her gram and love her videos. So for those listeners who don't know her, I think you're going to enjoy getting to know her. So I'm going to start with a quick intro. You're a hairdresser and salon owner in Gig Harbor, Washington.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that maybe, I don't know, half of the listeners might know where Gig Harbor is. Gig Harbor is, what would you say is like a suburb of Tacoma, suburb of Seattle? It's just west of Tacoma.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, either one of those. If you know where Tacoma is, it's closer to Tacoma than Seattle. But if you don't know where Tacoma is, it's about 40 minutes from Seattle.
Just
Yeah.
south of Seattle. It's all
hmm
part of the same area.
Yeah.
And I've never been to Gig Harbor. I've been to Seattle many times.
hmm
I imagine Gig Harbor is gorgeous.
It is really gorgeous and it's really safe there too. So I would say it is where I grew up. Kind of came full circle back. I moved away for a while, Seattle, Tacoma, and Vegas for a time. So I'm glad that I did it, but never thought I'd be back in my hometown, but here I am. So,
My wife is exactly the same.
yeah.
She talked shit about her hometown of Westlake Village, California for
Mm.
all the years that I knew her. And here fast forward, we live in Westlake Village, California. That's
Yeah,
just kind of the way it works.
it just happens, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good. So you're in Gig Harbor. You're an
hmm
educator through your videos, and you have social media classes. And I just learned before we started recording that you have a social media class actually launching today,
I do.
right?
I do, yeah. I'm so
Which
excited.
is which sometimes the stars align and it
hmm
seems like we know what we're doing here on the Hair Game podcast. But I fully assure you this is total coincidence.
It really is. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about that. And then you're a Modern Salon Top 100
hmm
and you do lots of things. I think you've got a great personality that you bring to the industry. So I'm excited to kind of get into your story.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
So you're from Gig Harbor. We already talked about that.
hmm
How did you find your way into the hair industry?
Well, I feel like there was a couple different ways. I mean, my mom did hair, so she
Okay.
has kind of been encouraging me for a while. I always say I was destined for it at the age of like 3 or 4 when I gave my sister her first haircut with actual shears. I don't know
Wow.
how I actually managed to not cut myself, but I gave her the worst haircut you could imagine. And so my mom was very upset, but I kind of just joke around like, hey, like that's probably where it all started, you know? And years later, about when I was 25, I actually went to cosmetology school. So I did some other things prior to all of that. And then I just found that regular college just wasn't for me. I'm very ADHD. I just feel like I need to be doing something rather than just staring at a screen. And so it was just like, hey, like this seems creative, this seems fun, let's give it a go. And here we are,
Okay.
10 years later.
And so in those, I'm curious about those years. Like, well, did you go to college? You said it wasn't for you, but did you try to go to college?
I did try, and I played basketball. I played
Okay.
a lot of sports, so I was like, all right,
Mhm.
like I was a big basketball player. I'm very tall, and I just thought I loved playing basketball, and so I thought I'm going to be a pro basketball player, right? Super funny. I feel like
Of
every tall
course.
girl thinks that who plays basketball,
How
but
tall are you?
I'm 5'11", almost 6 foot. So
Okay.
yeah, not like crazy
Yeah.
tall, but tall enough. So
hmm
yeah, I tried playing at a couple different schools and I just really struggled paying attention to the subjects that I hated. And I just finally, after a couple transfers, like from Tacoma to Vegas, and then when I came back, I was like, you know what? I just think this isn't for me. And then I just kind of started to figure out what I wanted to do. And trade school sounded a little bit more my style. And I really wanted something that you can make it what you want, right? Like, being a hairstylist in the beginning, usually you're not making a lot of money. You're usually struggling and it's really hard. But fast forward, like you can really make your own prices, you can take your own clients, you can specialize. So you really can customize it and make your own schedule. Like all the things that I really want in my life. Like I want to have full flexibility. So I'm so grateful that I decided to go this route because it's really been the perfect thing for me. And then now I'm a content creator and an educator and salon owner. So it's kind of opened up other doors for me as well, which I really, really love. So, yeah.
I often say that our industry has so many different things for everyone who chooses to be part of it, including the corporate route. If you're a hairstylist who doesn't like to be behind the chair, you don't like maybe the ups and downs in the income or seasonality or whatever it may be. Or let's say you develop some sort of, physical ailment, maybe carpal tunnel or something. You can work for a company, and it's just awesome to see all the different things you can do. I mean, I'm 24 years in, and I'm a salon owner. I'm not a licensed hairdresser, but I've known thousands of licensed hairdressers, and to see the evolution of people and taking their different routes, throughout their careers, it's always really awesome. I always love to see it. So you're 100% correct in that. I talk about that pretty often.
Yeah.
Okay, so so you are very open about your sobriety.
Yeah.
And so I'll give you the opportunity to talk about it. You don't have to.
Oh, no,
I'll
I'm
give
an
you the
open
opportunity
book.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I think it's an educational, it's a valuable story for the listeners, because there are a lot of people in our industry and society broadly that struggle with substance abuse.
Yeah.
So do you mind telling us that story?
Absolutely. So I was really wild, kind of all growing up. My mom was a little strict, and I love my mom, but she was very, very, very strict. And so I kind of developed a little resentment and started feeling this desire to just go a little bit crazy with drinking and partying. And it really,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop you because I'm a parent of two kids, 11 and 13. And I would love to know, my wife and I are navigating the threshold of discipline, right? Strict to not strict. And so give us an idea of, when you say strict, give us an idea of what your mom did.
Well, I would say she was so fearful of me getting into any sort of trouble, whether it was even having one drink. She would not even let me go hang out with friends. I could only have,
in your teenage years?
Yeah, I couldn't go to other people's houses. I was unable to do that, and so until I was basically close to 18, I kind of started to just do it a little bit. But she was always that hawk parent who, I know she meant well, and I love my mom now. We've worked through all of that, but this is where my mindset was when I was going through it. And then my little sister was able to kind of do all of those things, and I knew what she was doing. And here I'm being disciplined for I was starting to get caught with things because I was at school starting to dabble into things. Even though I played sports, I got good grades, I was a good kid for the most part, but I was getting curious. And she would let people come over to our house, so she could monitor. She wouldn't let me talk on the phone in private. She wouldn't let me have a lot of things that most of my friends were able to do. And so it was just it was a little thing, but it ended up making me, I don't want to say making me, it was still a choice that I did, right? But it ended up feeling well, I'm going to go crazy once I turn 18, it's on. And I remember telling her that too. It was once I turned 18, I was out. I moved in with a friend of mine, and I was right into smoking and drinking and using drugs and partying a lot. And that just was the road for a very, very long time. That just got worse and worse. And I got myself into some abusive relationships, which made me, use even more, because I was trying to cope with all of that. And I was so brainwashed by these people that I literally had no self-respect anymore. I had low confidence. I just felt depleted and lost. And I was working, but I barely made it. I certainly wasn't saving money. And so I was very financially strapped a very long time, till I turned 30, to be honest. And it was that's when I got sober, which then I started to kind of
Wow.
So I had a very long road of this. 12 years for me seems like a long time. For most kids, they might have a 2 or 3 year span where they're into that stuff, and then they kind of okay, I'm out of college, I'm ready to kind of get my stuff together. And I did not. I was at the nightclubs. I go danced. I was just into all the wrong things. And I had lots of
Yeah.
friends. I was all about my friends. And we went out, not just like on the weekend. I was out like 5 nights a week, going hard. And
Wow.
after the nightclub, I was going to the after hours nightclub, so partying till 10 a.m. That just like
Oh,
doesn't set your day up very well.
no.
When you are partying till 10 a.m., you
That
are
shuts your day down.
you're done. You're done. You're either continuing to do other drugs to keep yourself
Yeah.
going, which I did have days like that, or you're so crashing and burning that you're sleeping the entire day. So you just are like,
Right.
I was just on this really, really bad cycle for a very long time. And I had
I'm
this
sure Vegas
moment.
didn't help.
No, oh my God. Vegas was
Vegas
like,
didn't help.
no, it was like perfect for me at the time because I was like, this is so great. Like, I was such a baby when I moved there. I was 23 and I just got to see a whole new side of like what partying could be. And it was terrible for me because and I was
Yeah.
in an abusive relationship at that time. So
Oh.
it was bad. I dated a fighter and he was, uh,
MMA fighter?
and he was evil. I'm not
Wow.
going to say who it is, but yeah, he was very not good news. And so,
Wow.
anyways, but what he did to me, he lost his professional license because of what he
Oh,
did. So, yeah.
okay.
So
So
that,
there's some justice, maybe
yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit.
And so he was pretty insane. Like he actually tried to kill me. So it was pretty
Oh
intense. Yeah. And
my God.
that was like the worst abuse that I've ever been through when someone actually tried to do that. And so it really messed me up for quite a few years, as you can imagine. And it changed me. My friends were like, you're different. And they understood why, but like they could see me really like starting to spiral after that. So, I'm grateful for all of it because it's really like made me a stronger human being going through all of the things that I went through. And there's so much more. I'm just kind of giving a couple little things here and there. I could talk about it for a long time, but turning 30, I had this moment when I was a 19-year-old. I had a fake ID. I was out with older people. And I remember seeing people at the club that were like in their 40s. And I was like, God, those are like losers. Like, what are they doing at the nightclub? I'm like 19, so I'm a baby. And
Yeah.
as I was turning 30, I thought, oh my God, like if I don't change, I will be that person,
Mm-hmm.
like in the nightclub.
Yep.
And I just like, for some reason, I'm so grateful for that moment, for that like epiphany, because it really started to direct me into a sobriety way of life. And I met my now fiance. He was a client of mine, one of my first clients when I did all the services, and he was sober. And I remember just having the best conversations with him while he was just like my client. And I started to get really sober curious. And I was like, God, like you have fun? Like you actually have fun sober? And he laughed and he'd say, yeah, like I know it sounds hard, but like it's really possible. So anyways, that just really opened up the doors and sparked something in me. And I thought, I think that's what I need for my life. I've gone hard for 12 years. I think we're done. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a really hard 2 years of recovery. I went to therapy. I went to NA, AA. I had two sponsors. I listened to all the podcasts and motivational, inspirational things you could possibly listen to in every moment of my free time to help me change my mindset because I knew that I was so broken. And it took me about 2 years for my brain to physically recover from all of the damage that I had done from drugs and
Wow.
drinking. And like I was emotionally unstable. Like I
Hold
remember,
on.
yeah.
I want to. Okay, we'll pick up there in a second, but um, I want you to describe the physical recovery
Hmm.
of your brain.
Yeah.
I mean, what is clearly drugs and alcohol will do damage to a brain, but describe that a little more.
Yeah. So I would say I had my first thing is like I had no emotional regulation. I would be okay one moment, and the smallest little insignificant thing that most people are like, yeah, whatever, I would freak out. I would cry. I would scream. I looked psychotic. I would get into fights with my now fiance who would, he'd bring something up and I would just like flip. And so my brain just couldn't stabilize itself. Like I was just a mess. And the severe depression that I went through, because when you're on, the last drug that I stopped was actually painkillers. So you're flooded so much with artificial like dopamine and like other neurotransmitters in your brain. You don't produce it naturally. What's the word?
Serotonin.
It's like serotonin, and I think there's another one too, but I did not produce it naturally anymore.
Oh,
And so I had the worst depression, and it was just terrible. I can understand why people
wow.
relapse, because surprisingly, I did not relapse when I actually, June, I just celebrated 8 years. So, like, literally, I remember like it was so incredibly hard to get up out of my bed every single day. For like the first 3 months were torture, and I
Wow.
couldn't be around anybody who did it, like any sort of like drinking or drugs. Like it was so just over the top for me. And so I really like separated myself from people that had problems with it. My friends were super supportive. So the ones that have like a normal relationship with alcohol, that maybe just have a drink, I can still hang out with them now and have no issues. But during those first 3 months, I had to have complete clean break from everybody. And people that I used to party with, like I sent a mass text and I said, "Hey, I'm doing this. I would appreciate if you never reached out to me again." And then I just deleted everyone's number, and it was great because
Wow.
people respected it, and I think they were probably shocked, but it was so good for me. But yeah, just that physical depression was just brutal. There's just nothing that you can do about it except for try your try your best, and hopefully have like super supportive people with you to help you get through that period, which I did. And I made sure to go to meetings every single day, and I cry a lot, and it was just yeah, it was pretty hard. But I'm very
That's
grateful for
crazy.
everything, because I'm a strong person and I can get through just about anything nowadays. So
Yeah, I understand that one of the hardest parts is basically changing your most, if not all, of your social network,
yeah, yeah, it was
right?
definitely hard. And I think, thank God that for me, I did have a lot of friends that like they have a normal relationship with alcohol and they don't use drugs. And so it's like, well, that's good, because thankfully I didn't have to like literally lose all friends, but I
Mm-hmm.
would be willing to do that because it was so important to me to finally like change my life. And I knew that like in order to do that, you have to make radical choices. And so
Mm-hmm.
like I can see it so well in other people that they don't change friendships and they're back to using within a couple months, because it's just not possible to like continue to be around that and like expect to be okay with it. Like it's just not, it just doesn't work out. So,
Right.
mhm.
Right. So I'm very curious, through this period, this 12-year period,
Mhm.
what was your relationship with your mom like?
Oh, it was rocky on and off for quite a while, I would say. I think it finally got healed after I got sober. So we would have good periods, but there was still a lot of like this butting heads constantly, and she wanted to kind of control me still into my adulthood. And it was just like I just used to be like, if you're going to try to tell me what to do, I'm just not going to talk to you. Like that's just kind of how I rolled. I was alcohol and drugs made me a little bit cold. Like I was still like me personality wise, but I was like, I didn't have a lot of empathy, and I just was like, I don't give an F. Like that's how I was. It was like, if you're gonna tell me what to do and I don't agree with you, like I'm out. Like you just won't see me. So needless to say, it wasn't great, but we would have moments of like, okay, it's a holiday, it's a birthday, like, we'll try to get along for the sake of this day. And it was just not until I got sober that it like, okay, like we both went to therapy to work on the relationship, and that was one of my therapists was literally to work on that relationship with my mom, and then one was to like work on the trauma that I had been with ex abusive
Mhm.
relationships. So it was a lot.
Right.
It was a lot.
So you guys would see each other. So you would go home to her house on special occasions,
Yeah.
but otherwise you wouldn't really see each other.
I would try to show face, because it was like that's the most important thing to my parents, and like I loved them and I wanted to try, but I was just like so in this lifestyle that like I would just be like, all right, I'll come hang out for a little bit and then I'm going out. And so like
Mm.
everything was like, all right, well, I got to go now, and then I would go. So,
Was
Yeah.
your dad there too? Did you have this same issue with your dad?
No, he's pretty easygoing, and I feel like it really, my mom was a lot like really over the top with things, and so they were completely different parenting styles, and he would talk to me when it was something really serious, but his talk was like a 4 minute talk, not like a 4 hour talk. And so it was just completely different. I mean, he obviously was like in the middle of this like battle with my mom and I. So he tried, playing like, hey, like, let's just get along. But we were both so like bull like personalities that it's like, oh my gosh, like you're losing the battle with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sound like Tauruses.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know the
Exactly.
listeners who like this kind of thing are like, yeah, Taurus.
I am a
I'm
Taurus.
so not into that, by the way. You are a Taurus?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't think I'm like into that. I honestly know a little bit about like my, sign, but I'm not like, oh, she's a Gemini, she's this, and this. Like, I don't
Right.
know. I just know I'm a Taurus and I'm a bull, and I do fit the part of like some of those characteristics. So,
I'm not into it either, but I thought I would just throw that out there. So it sounds like I am, but anyway.
yep.
All right. Well, it's a story that sounds like it has a really great happy ending, and
Hmm.
you've been sober for 8 years. You became a hairstylist within that period, that within your abuse, right?
I did, and that
Okay,
was.
and
Oh, sorry.
and then through you talked about your now husband was a client, which is so cool because it seemed like he helped kind of in your transition towards sobriety, and he probably helps you now that I guess you're both are sober, right?
Yes. Hmm.
So that just sounds perfect. And so how did your business, I mean, how did your behavior with your clients and the managing of your business behind the chair change
Oh.
from, when you were abusing drugs and alcohol to being sober?
Wow, it was a complete change. So I did hair obviously like before I got sober, and let's just say I managed to keep about a handful of people that I still actually have today, and I tell them all the time, I don't know what I did to keep you, but thank you for being here because I was the flakiest hairstylist. I mean,
Uh,
I feel like I did a pretty good job. Obviously, I don't think they would have stayed with me also if I did a terrible job on their hair. But I was a constant rescheduler, constant like, I was always having excuses for things. And so I've rescheduled most of my clients most of the time, at least once or twice for every single appointment. And so that just doesn't really hold a stable clientele. So needless to say, like it wasn't until I like got sober is when I started to really continuously to really build a strong full clientele. And then so business got really good once I got through that 2 years of healing, then I started focusing on my career. I knew that I couldn't focus on career and healing simultaneously to 100%. So I basically dedicated my life, still did hair, but I wasn't like hardcore about hair until I got like through all of the healing and the therapy and meetings. And then I was like, all right, like I changed salons. I got surrounded by people that were a
why did
little,
you change salons?
I would say I was in a space that just didn't really fit my style. They were a lot older than me. I felt like they weren't really doing modern things. It was just like not motivating, and it just didn't, they were nice people, but it was just not really where I could grow. And I wanted to be around stylists that were really like inspired and trying to do like more modern things, and they're really focused on their career. So I ended up changing salons, actually a couple times, but and then I worked at that one where I really started to like focus, and I started getting a lot better. Started to notice I was getting a lot of requests for blonding, people saying, oh my gosh, I've never had my hair this light. No one's ever been able to get the blonde that I like. And so I was like, maybe I need to focus on this and kind of just like start specializing. And that's kind of where that started. And so, yeah, I basically, people noticed, like, you seem different. And I've always been an open book. I feel really strongly that sobriety is something that probably should be talked about more because so many people struggle with drugs or alcohol or both. And I think that when you can share that, I know that I've helped either my clients personally or like a family member that they've had that they're like trying to gain understanding. And so it's really special when I do share stuff on social media and I get DMs and comments of like people really appreciating my vulnerability with that because they're in the same space and they don't know where to go and what to do. And so like that is like why I do what I do, because I want to help people in some way. Because if I can get through it, I know anybody can. Like it's really hard. It was the hardest thing I ever did, but it's possible. So yeah, it was cool to kind of see my clients notice all that stuff. So
I understand that part of why some people struggle to get to the point where they're going to try to be sober is because they don't recognize that they have a problem.
mm-hmm.
And so what are some of like the things that happen that should let somebody know they have a problem and they need to take it seriously and they need to make a change?
That's a good question. I would say it's a very gray area. It's never black and white with like drinking or drugs. I would say if your relationships are impacted in any way, if your time management is impacted in any way, are you like super flaky in your life? Is it physically making you feel a certain way? Are you using it to cope with anything? Any of those things, I feel like it's probably not serving you. And I don't think that you have to be a homeless junkie that doesn't shower and like literally has nothing in his life to have a problem. You can be a very functional addict. And I see it all the time with people. They're high functioning, but they're using drugs and alcohol to escape, whether it's their kids, their job, their trauma that they went through, that they don't want to open up that door. There's a lot of things. And so I think if there's probably even more that I'm not touching on, but I think those are the first things that come to my mind. And so I think if you can honestly ask yourself that and really like honestly analyze your own life, you might see that it may not be the right thing for you anymore. So.
And what would you say would be step number one for any listeners who think that maybe they do have a problem or they know they have a problem? What's the first step?
I would say go to a meeting. And I know it's super cringe. It's super uncomfortable. I felt so incredibly awkward and it was weird, but I just kept going because you get to hear stories from people. I think hearing stories from people is like, holy crap, like that sounds like me. That you start to hear yourself in every story and you're like, whoa, okay, maybe I do have a problem. And so I think for me, and if the meeting thing is too over the top, there's online meetings, there's testimonies that you can hear from people who had a problem with drugs or alcohol that are literally free on YouTube, or there's apps that you can listen to just the testimony, that you get to hear someone's story from start to finish. And I think that when you start to listen to those things, quite often they start to help you go, okay, maybe I can do this. And it really starts to help you like create like a path, because everybody approaches it a little bit different. But I think getting in contact with people who are sober really helps you start to kind of figure that out, because it's really overwhelming. And I would say surrounding yourself with people who are doing it is going to be the easiest way to go, because if your friends aren't in sobriety or in recovery, they're not going to have the right answers for you. And you cannot take advice from people who haven't done it. Like you just can't. So
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. It's, I think, really great. And thanks for being open about it. And by the way, for the listeners, Erica's got a lot of content. I don't know about a lot, but you have a decent amount of content about your sobriety on your Instagram, which I think is great, and probably other places. Do you have a YouTube channel and a TikTok and all that?
So I have TikTok. I'm starting to get onto YouTube. I want to kind of be on all the platforms. So yeah, I literally posted my first YouTube short yesterday. So that's going to be built up a little bit because I have like nothing on there, but yeah, stay tuned for that. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, what did you say about TikTok? You have a TikTok?
I do have a TikTok. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's a lot of the same stuff, I would say, as my Instagram.
Okay. So do you regurgitate? I'm going to use a negative word. Do you regurgitate content for TikTok from Instagram?
Yeah, I'm either filming on TikTok and I, put it on Instagram, or I film on Instagram and I put it on TikTok. Occasionally, I have just one for Instagram and then one for TikTok, because they are different platforms, and I really believe that, they're different. Like they do differently. Like some of them like that do really well on TikTok don't on Instagram, and vice versa. So I probably will start to do a little bit more of a variety, like from each platform. So that way it's just kind of some new content, different ideas. Mm-hmm.
So give us an idea of what kind of videos do well on Instagram and what kind do well on TikTok, but not the opposite.
I would say TikTok is usually first with a new style. So I would say, like, when COVID happened, it was like dancing videos, and then a lot of it was like lip syncing stuff. And then I started to notice it's a lot of raw footage, not so like curated, aesthetic kind of stuff where you're like lip syncing or you're doing these dances. It's like, let's just show like some real raw footage and like put some value with it and education to it, or humor, kind of entertain people. And I think that once it's on TikTok, it takes a little bit and then you start to see it on Instagram. But I would say like Instagram is still like, I feel like a lot of mine do okay on each one, but I'm trying to think of more specific examples than that. But I would just say, yeah, I feel like the raw footage is like the only thing I can think of right now that does a little bit better on TikTok, but I know Instagram is kind of like right behind that. Mm-hmm.
So I know that TikTok has primarily younger, or I should say, it skews younger in terms of audience age than Instagram. I don't know if that's changed. I'm kind of assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that as TikTok has evolved and kind of matured as a platform, some older demographic is going onto it and using it. Am I right or
Oh,
wrong? Is it
yeah.
still like massively younger?
I think there are more younger people on TikTok, but I do know, a lot of people that are, Gen Xers or even older that do go onto TikTok. And so I think, I don't know the current statistic of like ages right now, but I know like just a little bit ago, it was more younger people of like the Gen Z or younger on TikTok. So, but I'm a millennial, so I feel like a lot of millennials are on TikTok too. So.
So give us an idea, because your social media class is launching today,
Mhm.
the same day that this episode is launching on the Hair Game podcast. Give us an idea of what somebody's going to find in one of your social media classes.
So I would say it's a really good overview of how to not only grow your following, but figuring out your niche and how to, because there's so much content out there. And I think that people don't know where to begin. So I break down what I did of like, okay, I need to figure out why, like what I'm going to talk about, why I'm going to talk about it, and then start to develop some ideas that support my goals. Like I wanted to grow my following to get sponsored by brands. I wanted to monetize social media. I wanted to educate. I wanted to just attract my ideal clientele and just have a lot of opportunities. And I feel like, there's just so much that you can, when you stay consistent on social media, that a lot of opportunities start to open up. And so I kind of talk about how to determine or figure out ideas, how to maximize your time, how to film and make things look better. Um, oh, there's so much. I have like a few hours worth of information that I talk about, and then I open it up for questions. And for the in-person class, I actually get to do more one-on-one stuff with people, and I actually allow time for filming, and then I go around and kind of help people. All right, so what are you struggling with? Let me help you. So that way you get like really customized experience and help from me, because some people struggle with just how do I actually open this up and film? How do you edit? Like there's so many things that go into content creation, and I just try to make it really simplified for people so that way it doesn't feel overwhelming, and that way you can figure out like how to make ideas that work for your brand and to allow to like achieve all your goals within social media. So there's a lot. There's a lot.
There is a lot. There's so much to talk about. And because the landscape's been changing and it's going to keep changing, I guess we're probably 10 years into, 10 to 12 years, but let's say 2014, I think most people in our industry were finding Instagram. Really before that, not so much. The early people were out there. But it's been about 10 years that we've had Instagram, obviously longer with Facebook. So it's not a new topic, but there are new subjects within the topic because things keep changing. One of my big questions for a lot of the listeners, because the listeners are beauty professionals, mostly hairstylists behind the chair. They make a living. That this is very important. Time is very important. How they spend it is very important. So, and I know a lot of them have an Instagram account, but a lot don't have a TikTok account. If they do have a TikTok account, it's not, fully managed the way that their Instagram might be. In some cases, they've even started pulling back from spending a lot of time on Instagram because they maybe weren't seeing, the payback. They invest the time and the energy into it, and they're not seeing a direct payback. So it's really easy to just kind of start, dwindling the amount of effort and time going into it. What do you suggest to this person, to this beauty professional, as far as adopting a TikTok? Is it worth their time?
I would say yes, because I can't even tell you how many people actually find me on TikTok. And what's really
Clients.
great, clients. And I for a while, I'll be off TikTok for months, and then I'm like, crap, I should probably start posting on there again. But it's crazy because I actually ask all new clients, where did you find me? And a lot of them find me off TikTok. And I would get off of that platform a lot. And so that information, basically all the right SEO keywords and hashtags are all searchable on Google. So the fact that I've utilized the right things for finding clients for hair allows me to be highly searchable when people are typing certain things on Google, in my area. So it's worked out really well for me. And I think you don't have to post every single day if you're not wanting to be aggressive about growing, but just making sure you have the page and you try to post at least once a week, and you can still just post the same thing. It's very easy to just recycle content onto the other platform if you don't want to make new. But I would say it's super recommended if you want to grow your clientele. So I highly recommend it.
Okay, well, you heard it here, everyone. You can increase your book with TikTok. This is the early concern, is that you couldn't do that, right? Because either the age demo skewed too young, the 14-year-old girl who's doing dancing with her friends, she's unlikely to be a client of yours, right? But you're saying that you are able to get new clients with TikTok, and not even with posting regularly. So that's a really, really great thing to hear. And by the way, reusing, I'll use that term instead of regurgitating, because regurgitating is kind of gross, content from Instagram onto TikTok. So those are all really good things. How often are you, well, this is not really a fair question because, this is kind of part of your business, but I was going to ask you, how much time are you spending on social media?
A lot. I don't even
A
know
couple
how.
hours a day or more?
Probably more, to be honest. I mean, let's just say this. That'll probably be average. So some days it's literally very minimal. And then some days it can be a good part of my day if I'm filming and editing and captioning videos, because I do like to be aggressive with posting, because I have my goals change and they get higher and they get to the next level. So I feel like if I see a lot more growth in myself if I'm posting every single day, and the algorithm's always changing. So I just like to kind of keep in line with all of that. And I think if I pull away and literally just remove myself for too long from social media, so much changes and then it's all overwhelming and then it's hard to get back into the flow. So I find that if I'm just spending more consistent, smaller chunks of time on social media, just whether it's filming, editing, captioning, it just becomes normal. It's just part of my day. It's part of my business, and it doesn't feel overwhelming anymore. Social media was so overwhelming. I didn't know how to film. I didn't know how to come up with ideas. I didn't understand how people did it. And so I just got really serious about it, and I started to really focus on it and track things, and started to come up with my own little strategy, so you could, so to speak, that worked for me. And so I feel what I've done has really worked out well. Everything that I've wanted to achieve has been achieved. And I just kind of like, all right, what's next? Like, let's go. But I personally like it. And I think if you can figure out the way that makes sense for you, it's not difficult and it's just part of your day. So,
yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense. Okay, we're going to stop this conversation right here with Erica. We have a lot more to talk about next week. Come back and we're going to keep the conversation going.